Welcome to Pre-Flight Playbook, back here at Terminal C at Newark Airport in front of Vesper Tavern, and I'm thrilled that my guest today is Super Bowl winning coach and now CBS NFL Today commentator, Bill Cowher. Welcome, Bill.
I must admit I have never done anything like this in my entire life. I've gone through airports rather quickly at times, and then on delays I might find myself in the Vesper Tavern. But to sit out here in a orchestrated interview, my first.
Well, as you'll see, there'll be people running to their flights and people
Yeah.
anxious to get home, and they'll stop by and say hello. And 3 weeks of the NFL season in the books now. Anything stand out to you at this point?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things you're seeing with all the quarterbacks, a little changing of the guard, right? But it's very exciting, I think, when you look at guys like Gardner Minshew come in and what he's been able to do. Daniel Jones here in the New York area, and really just around the league. I think it's a very kind of transitional period of time right now, and I think there's a lot of excitement. And you know, some of the 3-0 teams, the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if anybody would have foresaw that. But you know, I always think the first month is a very revealing time about your team. You know, as a coach, you sit back and you kind of take 4 weeks. It's a body of work. You kind of now realize what your strengths are, but more importantly, you realize what your limitations are. So I think it's kind of a very exciting early in the season, because even at 0-3, some of these teams still have a chance. Remember the Houston Texans a year ago started 0-3 and made it to the playoffs. So
just as a reminder for anybody who might not be aware, and I can't imagine there anybody is that way, Bill coached the Steelers for 15 years, made the playoffs 10 times, not bad, 8 division titles. I believe that you and Paul Brown are the only ones to make it in the first 6 years with a new team, which is pretty impressive. When your team starts 0-3, Bill, or 3-0, or 2-0, or 0-2, is there a tendency to overreact and to try to make changes too fast that you've been working on over the summer? Or is 3 games a pretty good sample size that if something's going wrong, you know you better fix it soon?
Well, I think with each team, it's really subjective. And I think, again, a lot of it is predicated on what the expectation levels, realistic expectations levels are. You know, you were 0-3 and you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, there's an expectation that you should be 3-0. And so I think, again, you look at each situation subjectively and you see what you want to do. I don't think you want to wait too long and not be afraid to make change. I think that's the biggest thing. I think part of the National Football League is, how I say, you adapt and adjust. You adapt to your personnel that you have, whether it be via injury, whatever it may be, and you have to adjust your systems accordingly. So I think adapt and adjust is what you end up doing after you have a body of work and a sample size. And like I said, more importantly is realize where your limitations are and find a way to mask that and then accentuate what your strengths are.
It used to be that teams would self-scout during the bye week.
Yep.
But I would imagine staffs are big enough now that self-scouting is just going on all the time.
Well, it is, but I think self-scouting, but you're always preparing for the next team.
Right.
So I think when you have a bye week, you have an opportunity to sit back and look at yourself with your players. Not that you don't do that on Mondays and Tuesdays, but at the point, man, you're moving on to the next team. So I think when you have a bye week, you have an opportunity to sit back, assess where you are. You know, sometimes this early bye, you know, after 3 weeks, I'm not so sure what you can really take out of it. I think I always like to have a bye at least 5 or 6 weeks in, where we kind of find out, hey, let's just sit back, let's talk about where we are. And we know what's ahead of us, we know where we've been, but what's our state right now?
Right.
What's our thinking right now? Because, you know, it is a long year. There's a series of ebb and flow that takes place within a season, just like ebb and flow within a game. And your ability to stay focused on the task at hand, your ability to be able to control your emotions, and are all part of, you know, trying to create some kind of consistency, you know, with your team and with your football team as you go through a season.
So, Bill, let's just talk about the Steelers for a second, a team with high expectations going into the season. They lose Ben Roethlisberger, their franchise quarterback forever, 0-3. How does Mike Tomlin make sure that this team that maybe thought it had Super Bowl potential, how does he convince them that the season is not over? And, you know, we're not even to October yet, and I'm sure the Steeler fans are getting anxious. Maybe there's some anxiousness in the locker room. What can a coach do to make sure the team stays focused and say, we still got 13 games to go. It's a long way to go, and we can turn this thing around.
Well, I think that's the mindset. I think the noise is a lot louder on the outside than it is on the inside. When you get inside the building, you understand we just got to win a game. Their focus right now is playing the Cincinnati Bengals next Monday night, and let's just win a game. You can only control what you can control. And right now you got an offense around Mason Rudolph that, they're trying to figure out who we are. And there's a little bit of an identity element taking place right there. Minka Fitzpatrick comes in on the defensive side of the ball. They get 5 takeaways, but they're still giving up big plays, and that's the thing that they're going to have to continue to work on. And maybe adapt, like I said before, adapt to this personnel, and maybe have to adjust some things, tweak some things that you're doing on the offense and defensive side of the ball. So there's not any panic in Pittsburgh, but there is certainly a sense of urgency, and this game Monday night takes on a lot of importance.
Were you surprised that they gave up next year's #1 for Minka Fitzpatrick when there's got to be some questions about Roethlisberger coming back from elbow surgery? We don't know anything yet really about Mason Rudolph. And if the season completely falls apart, that could be a top 10 pick in what's supposed to be a good quarterback draft. I personally was surprised that they bailed out of the first round already of the draft for a safety or a corner.
No, I think when you look at it, number one, you feel good about Ben probably coming back, and if he doesn't come back, you drafted Mason Rudolph to be that guy. You feel good about him. But one thing you're going to have to address would have been the safety position.
Right.
Sean Davis has been a guy who can't stay healthy. You got a chance to get a first-round pick in Minka Fitzpatrick, who I think is a first-rounder. He's like 16th pick in the draft, and he's already proven himself. Because every time you take a player in the draft, you're still rolling the dice.
Right.
You don't know it. You'd like to think it's a short thing, but unless it's a top 5 pick, there's still a bit of a roll of the dice. I still think they feel like this season's not over. I think they sent the right message. I think they got a good player. I was in favor of the
Do you think that's an indication, Bill, that they know more about Rudolph than anybody outside the building, but do you think this is an indication that they do think he can be their guy? The fact that they potentially traded themselves out of position of getting a pretty good quarterback next year?
Yeah, who's to say what quarterback's going to be there? Where you're going to pick? Do you really need one? You might be other needs you need. Like I said before,
Right.
I think safety is going to be an area of need.
Right.
And you've already got a premier player that can play multiple roles. And you got him now in his second year. He's got 4 more years on his contract that you have this kid. So I just think it was a good pick. It was a proven pick. It's a safe one from the standpoint you're getting a first rounder next year, a year early.
Okay. So this is a personal question. When the Steelers induct you on Monday night into the Ring of Honor, are you going to cry?
No, going back there, it's the Hall of Honor, and it's going to be a really special time for me. And being put in there with a lot of elite players and coaches.
Who else is going in with you Monday night?
It's going to be Hines Ward and John Brown and he passed away, played in the early 50s.
Okay.
And but it's going to be special. It's like I said, it's a great honor, and certainly growing up there. I grew up 3 miles from the River Stadium, and so it's going to be a very special night.
I guess I can ask this question, but you can't. But what took so long for them?
They've only done this for 3 years now.
Oh, is that right?
They had, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They had like 27 members the first year, then there was like 5, and this past year there was 4. So it's something new for the Steelers. They're pretty old-fashioned.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's pretty much about the team.
No
and the
cheerleaders,
city.
right?
No cheerleaders. No, it only got a decal on one side of the helmet. It's pretty blue collar.
Even the Giants, who also don't have cheerleaders, their first year at MetLife Stadium, they inducted a whole bunch of guys into their Ring of Honor.
Right.
They started. So I guess the Steelers are really traditional here
Yes.
in that they don't do that. But that's a great honor. I'm sure that it means an awful lot to you. And it's when you look at the Steelers, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin, that covers since 1969. That's 50 years.
Right.
I'm not missing anybody there, right?
No, you're not. 50 years, and the league is celebrating its 100th year. So
Isn't that
that's
unbelievable?
half
3
the league.
coaches in that period of time?
Yeah. Well, listen, it starts at the top. I think the Rooney family, they're very special, and I was blessed to be able to go back there and follow a guy like Chuck Noll. And like I said, growing up there, I grew up 4 miles from the stadium. I know what the 70s were like.
Yeah.
It re-energized the city, and what they did is kind of bring some pride back. Went to the city of champions, they referred to it for a period of time there in the 70s, and to be able to kind of follow in the footsteps of Chuck and be able to kind of bring back, a little bit of that great tradition that we've had there, and obviously winning the Super Bowl and Super Bowl 40 in Detroit and being able to hand that trophy to Mr. Rooney was very special.
Bill, I mean, now it's been, your last year coaching was '06, so this is 2019, so it's your 13th year out of coaching. At what point did you know that you were never going back? And up to that point, did any team ever really tempt you?
I don't know if I've reached it.
Okay.
And I've been having opportunities, yes, multiple times. But you know what? The one thing I have right now is really great balance in my life. I'm able to work a job on CBS. It gives me a format to be able to talk about the games on Sundays with guys that have also played the game. But also, what I like now is the off season. I miss coaching, I miss strategizing, I miss working with players, coaches. I love the element of competition. You miss the competition, but the one thing I don't miss is the way of life, the lifestyle that you have to live, and particularly in this transparent world. I'm able to now live in New York City, and I'm a New Yorker through and through, and there's some normalcy back in my life, being able to walk the streets and kind of like everybody else, Central Park, I love it. And so, I've really kind of adopted this city and love being here because there's so many people here, and you can kind of get lost here. And so I really have enjoyed this.
Was there a little bit of news in there where you said you haven't reached the point yet?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know what? I guess I would just say, why shut a door you don't ever have to shut?
Right.
But it's highly unlikely that I would ever come back, and I have no clear indication. I have no desire to do that, but I just said, I don't be one of those guys, and this is how I feel now. I don't know how I'm going to feel a couple of years from now, so I feel young, feel great, vibrant, still love the game, but I really love my platform I have at CBS.
So before I move on here, these teams that had talked to you over the years, did it ever come down to you having to sleep on it overnight and give them a yes or no the next day?
No, I think it was one of those things that I did it for a while, actually had some conversations, and I just wanted to see how I would feel about that. But I stepped down, and unfortunately I lost my wife 40 years later to cancer, and at that point I met my current wife that I've been married to now for 5 years, and I just suddenly started enjoying life outside of football, able to do things I could never do before, travel, have some normalcy as I talked about, and it's just more this lifestyle. I've been living it. It's got great balance for me, and like I said, it never got to that point. And but I like talking about it for a while, and I haven't done it the last couple of years because I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at.
Bill, don't these coaches today, and even when you coach, make this job so much harder than it needs to be? I mean, they've almost become obsessive over the smallest detail that might come into play maybe once a year. So instead of getting a normal night's sleep, they're up looking at the last bit of tape at 1 o'clock in the morning.
And it is a hard job.
I know.
You better look at every little situation, because
okay.
every little situation can cost you a game can cost you a season can cost you a job. So it is an all-encompassing job. I think the good ones turn over every stone, cover every situation, put yourself in a situation where you want to make sure your players are prepared. I think preparation is everything in the game of football, and I think what you're able to do is prepare. How you doing, man? And so you prepare, but I think the biggest thing for coaches is the ability to adjust within a game. I think that's what separates good coaches from great coaches. I think the ability to, look, Bill Belichick, say what you want about him, but he's able to go into games, make adjustments within a game, and look how a team plays in the second half of games. That'll tell you something about, number one, the mindset of the coach, the flexibility of the schemes that they have in, and be able to understand where you are, what you need to do in the midst of that. I can't block that guy. I thought I could, but I can't block that guy. Well, then give him some help, and they can't stop this play. Why are we not running it more often?
Right.
So sometimes it's the simplest of things as you talk about, and yes, at times we may make it more complex than we need to, but I think you got to make sure you cover almost every situation.
Were you a sleep in the office guy?
No, I never. I took my kids to school in the morning, and I tried to get home. I got home every night, no matter what time it was. But there were some nights that were later than others.
And that's important. And I think there are some coaches that, after they retire or as their kids grow up and they've missed so much, I think there might be some regret there from guys I've talked to over the years, but it is, I know it is an incredibly time-consuming job, especially September through January, and now it's become, 365, 24/7, that there really is no break with all the stuff that goes on in the off-season.
And it's always been that way, Gary. I think the one thing it is now, there's just more transparency in our world. We see everything now. Everything's on some kind of, as you can see, people with cameras.
Yeah.
You can see wherever someone's at 24/7 between all the social platforms. But it's always been that demanding. And I think the one thing that I had, and I was blessed at, I had a very close family. I had a wife that was very supportive. I had 3 daughters. And I made sure I was
All
there
athletes.
with them. They were all
Your wife was an
athletes.
athlete?
I spent more time in basketball gyms than I probably did on a football field in the off season. But I wouldn't change anything in the world. We were a very close family, and even to this day, I got 5 grandkids. I'm so blessed, and try to make time with all of them. But the game of football is very much, obviously you can say, it's particularly in Pittsburgh as we were there. It's a big deal. When you lose, that city took it personal, and so winning was a big part of it. But at the same time, they went to school after a loss like everybody else did. I just had a job like everybody else had a job. The only thing different is when I had a bad day at the office, everybody knew. So it was pretty much that's how we looked at it.
I know that you now have a very good relationship with Bill Belichick. I've seen a bunch of the interviews that you've done with him. Was it that when you were coaching against him also?
Oh no, we were very much adversaries. we didn't talk very much, but
Right.
I think we always respected each other, particularly when Bill was in Cleveland and I was in Pittsburgh, and then when he went to New England, I was still in Pittsburgh, and he's a great historian. He's got great respect
Yes.
for the game, and I've always learned that. I think there was 2 people I learned a lot from as I was coaching. Obviously Marty Schottenheimer taught me everything I knew. I grew up, he was my mentor. But as you sit back as a head coach, I think you sit back to be good at your craft, you should look at others that are doing your craft. And so I always thought Bill Parcells did a very good job of using the media to send a message.
Absolutely.
I thought he was very, very good at that. And I learned to kind of adopt that kind of philosophy. And I thought Bill Belichick humility was a big part of everything he does. He's very respectful of the game. He's very respectful of opponents. He's constantly moving on to the next team as he does. And so his team is a very focused team. And I think that's a great quality that he has with his teams. And so you go up there as an understanding of doing your job. It's not about you personally. It's about us collectively. And I think the team element of it is something that he has bred it into that culture up there. And if you don't buy into it, you're not going to be there very long, as we saw with their last person they picked up. He made it 1 week, and
Yeah.
so I think that's just the way it's going to be.
It's funny when you were mentioning before about social media and the transparency. Antonio Brown putting on Facebook Live Mike Tomlin's post-game speech that was critical of the Patriots a week before they had to go to the AFC Championship game and play them. That's something you didn't have to deal with.
No, he didn't. I mean, I think Twitter was just starting as I was leaving, but I think again that the culture you have is you need to nip those things. You need to discuss those things, and the parameters need to be set and they need to be held enforced. And I think that they've done that in New England, and I think you can do that anywhere. I think players want structure. They want direction. And they also want accountability. That's what they want. So you have those elements in your whatever you're building, whether it's a business, a team, anything. But if you have some structure, some direction, and accountability, I said those are three pretty good things to try to build a culture around.
This Patriot dynasty and this run that they're on now, we'll probably never see that again in the NFL. And people want to say, is it Brady? Is it Belichick? And probably they couldn't have done it without each other.
Right.
But if you had to pick one that you'd say would have a better chance of doing without the other, can you do that?
Well, listen, I mean, I don't think you can really compare it. It's like it's like apples and oranges. I mean, they're different. They're totally different. I mean, it's a coach's job is to put the whole thing together.
Right.
A player's job is to do his. And you got 2 guys that are the best at what they do. A guy who has a big picture in mind, and a guy who's focused on the next play and making the people around him better. So when you have the combination of someone that those 2 people working in sync, that's what you have. They inspire the people around them. They make the people around them better, whether it's Bill with his coaches or Tom with the players. And so it's a very special, unique relationship. Tom is a special player. There's no question about it. But he also has brought in, and they both have that same respect for the game, that same sense of humility. And you know what? Tom will be the first one that gets yelled at if he makes a bad throw by Bill Belichick. So you know what? When your leader is your best worker, you know what? That's a good place to start.
He's 42 years old. Through the first 3 weeks of the season, has yet to throw an interception. How much longer can this go on at this level? And when he finally decides to walk away, do you think Belichick goes with him?
I don't think Bill goes with him. I really don't. I think Bill's fine in his own place where he's at. I think if he does, it's not because Tom's gone. I really don't believe it. I think for Tom, I don't know. I mean, I see he just defies odds all the time. He's in a very good system. Josh McDaniels is a very good coach. You don't see him take a lot of hits. He doesn't hold the ball long.
Right.
And you got a running game that's going to complement that to keep you honest. So they do a very good job of keeping him upright, not exposing him to a lot of hits. He takes a great job of getting rid of the ball and not taking those hits, and he takes care of himself. And I don't know, but you see guys like Ben, all of a sudden he's getting around that age. Drew, now he's got the thumb. Ben had the elbow. So you know, it takes its toll over a period of time. The rules have helped quarterbacks, no question about it. But I think Tom Brady's a rare breed.
Okay, so we're here at Pre-Flight Playbook here at Terminal C at Newark Airport in front of the beautiful sports bar Vesper Tavern, and my guest, of course, is Bill Cowher, former coach of the Steelers, Super Bowl winning coach, now with CBS on the NFL Today. And Bill, I don't know if you felt it because you live in the city, but on Monday there was just a buzz around town about Daniel Jones. When the Giants are going well, you can really feel it in Manhattan. What was your impression of him in his first time out?
Oh, I thought he played obviously as good as I've seen any rookie play in the first game. I mean, when you think about what he did, and you know, and not having Saquon the whole second half of that game, right. You know, he went down. You know, they kind of put it on his shoulders. And you know, the guy you can lean on and hand the ball to, make plays. Now your biggest playmaker's not with you, and so I just thought Daniel Jones, he's a great fit. I thought even you could see it in the preseason. I thought Pat started him perfectly. I think Eli being on the bench is going to help him get another set of eyes. But he's athletic, his athleticism, he's accurate, he's got a great football IQ. You know, the thing is right now, it's just unfortunate you won't have Saquon now for like 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it may be. And I think this is the kid that you'd be very excited about for the future, no question about it.
Bill, you lived in North Carolina for a while. I'm not sure how much you ever got to see Duke play. I think you've been back here since Jones played at Duke.
Yeah.
But everybody looked at a Duke quarterback. All they thought about was the Giants taking Dave Brown in the early 90s. How can you take a quarterback from Duke? How can you take him with the 6th pick in the draft? But I think if you look around the NFL, you see quarterbacks come from all kinds of schools.
Well, plus, I mean, Coach Cutcliffe, his head coach down there, is a very, very good coach. You ask any of the Mannings, you know, they coached him at Tennessee. Sure. And so he is a great coach, and I think he's got a great football IQ. And I talk about that element of it is, you know, he understands the game. And you looked at him at Duke, if you really studied him, it wasn't so much him. They led the country and drop passes. So he really didn't have a great surrounding group of players with him. But yet when you watched him, you saw the athleticism, you saw the accuracy, you saw the decision making and the ability to process information. And I think obviously in the preseason you saw glimpses of that as well. But you say, well, it's a preseason. You know, we'll see what happens in the regular season. Well, I think what you saw the other days, you know, listen, there's going to be some up and down. He's a young player. You know, he's not going to just take off like he's did. Plus, you know, there's a lot being put on his shoulders because of lack of the people around him. But, you know, I just think what you saw was a glimpse of somebody that I think can be a very solid quarterback for years to come.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, in 2004, you started the season, was Tommy Maddox was the starter, your first game?
That's correct.
Did he get hurt? Is that why you switched to Ben, or did you just switch to Ben?
Yeah, so we had Charlie Batch, actually. We had Tommy Maddox, Charlie Batch, and Ben Roethlisberger. And so Tommy Maddox started, but then Charlie Batch got hurt in the preseason, so we moved Ben up to the second quarterback and with a limited package with him. and we won the first game, and then the second game down in Baltimore, Tommy Maddox got hit and took a significant hit, and Ben had to come in, almost brought us back in that game.
Yeah.
But then became our starter in week 3 from there on out, and I think won his first 14 games.
I was going to say he had an incredible winning streak
Yeah.
after that. Were you getting to the point, had you even thought about it before Maddox was injured, when you thought you might make the move?
No, it really didn't. I think, again, Tommy was a guy that we felt good about, but we also needed a quarterback for the future. I thought sitting behind him for a period of time would have been good for him, just to see him how you process a game plan, how you break down opponents, what you're looking for, the little idiosyncrasies that go with that in that position. I did not expect him to go in that early, but obviously in hindsight, it wasn't too early. It's funny, when he came out of the draft, we had Eli, Phillip Rivers, and Ben. And I think the consensus pretty much was that Eli and Phillip Rivers, they came from programs where they could come in and be the face of your team right now. Where Ben, coming from Miami of Ohio, probably needed a little bit more time. And as it turns out, Ben was the first one to play, and I think all 3 of those guys have had tremendous careers.
And they have, and the situation that Pat Shurmur was faced with the Giants was so much different, where you really had no choice. You had to play Ben because of the injuries. But when you have an iconic figure like Eli Manning that's won 2 Super Bowls, been a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, is so popular with the fans. And we saw what happened a couple of years ago when Ben McAdoo started. Geno Smith, that one game, he got fired the day after that game. So it is a really sensitive situation for a coach to have to weigh so many different variables when you're sitting down a player like Eli Manning.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just to be very honest with the player. I think for any coach, and I was in Pittsburgh for 15 years, and there's multiple times that we had to take a player that was a very good player for us, but we moved on to a younger player because that's just the nature of the profession. That's the nature of the sport. You tell them not to take it personal, but it's hard for them not to take it personal. But at the same time, your obligation as a coach, I think, is if you want to build something sustainable, is to be able to make those tough decisions. Try to do it with sensitivity, but just be honest with them. They may not like it, but at least they'll respect it. And so I think communication with players is very imperative, just like relationships with anybody. I think, people don't have to like it, but they got to respect it. Sometimes you got to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
Do you think this transition for the coaching staff and for Jones is made a little bit easier because there aren't many players left in that locker room that have a history with Eli Manning? They've changed over 80% of the roster in 2 years, just about. So you don't have guys like Sean O'Hara and Chris Snee and Dave Deal who won championships with Eli. You have guys that are pretty much new to the team, just like Daniel Jones is, so they don't have necessarily that loyalty to Eli that under different circumstances might have made it tougher.
Yeah, I don't think that's a sensitive issue, honestly, okay. Gary. I do think players, they just want to win. They want to win, and they're going to trust a coach who's going to do the right thing, because you know what, that's the bottom line. It comes down to winning, and sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. You have to bench a player. You have to make changes. You have to fire a coach. Those are things that you do when you're the CEO of a team, or sure. You're head coach of a team. You can't make it personal. It's really all about holding people accountable, and at times not being afraid to think outside the box and to make change. And that's part of me. To me, that's your responsibility as a head coach.
All right. So the 3-0 teams: Patriots, Chiefs, Cowboys, Packers, 49ers, Bills, and Rams, and then you have the Lions, who are 2-0-1. We're not really surprised about the Patriots and the Chiefs or the Cowboys, I wouldn't think.
Right.
Packers maybe a little bit, but the 49ers, and not the Rams, obviously, 49ers and Bills, are they for real, or is this just a shooting star that's going to fade pretty soon?
I think those are the questions that you go into week 4 with, right? And so for San Francisco, they got a bye, so they're sitting good after 4 weeks.
And the Bills have the Patriots at home.
The Bills have the Patriots at home. I'll tell you, the one thing about the Buffalo Bills, they play defense. I think Josh Allen has continually got better. I think that had a lot to do, to be honest with you. I think when the Giants saw Josh Allen a week ago or 2 weeks ago and watched this young quarterback, the athleticism that he brought, and the ability just to extend a play, to make a play that's unscripted. Sometimes you get a guy, it's like from Eli's perspective where he's at, everything needed to be working in sync. And sometimes one thing was off, and it, it got a little awry. His lack of athleticism, showed itself.
Sure.
And I think with Daniel Jones, you saw his athleticism extended drive. All of a sudden, boom, and it infuses energy into your team.
Sure.
And so, like I said, it's these teams. Buffalo plays defense. I like their offense. The San Francisco 49ers, the same thing. I think right now, Garoppolo's healthy. It goes back to their defense. They couldn't take the ball away a year ago. They had 7 takeaways. Now they've got more than that, just 3 weeks of the season. So we'll see. But I like the formula that they both are using. They're both running the football. I love Devin Singletary up in Buffalo. I think this young kid has given them with Frank Gore and T.J. Yeldon. And they went out and actually they also addressed their offensive line.
Right.
The offensive line was a big problem for Buffalo a year ago. So, listen, if they're in the hunt, I know there's one place it's tough to go in December to go play, and that's up in Buffalo. It's not the place you want to go. So we'll see. They have a good formula. They're very solid. They don't beat themselves. Buffalo hasn't really played anybody that's won a game. Same with New England.
Right.
I think they're playing each other, and I think the combined record of the teams they played, there's 1 win amongst those 6 victories that they both have. So, with the opponents that they beat. So, again, that's just temperate. We'll see, but it's a lot better to be 3-0 than it is 0-3 right now.
And you mentioned Buffalo and the fans there. I mean, they're an enthusiastic bunch under any circumstances.
Awesome.
So now 3-0, going against the Patriots 3-0. If ever there was a statement game early in the season that, hey, you've been the bully for the last 18 years, but not anymore, this is where the Bills have to really assert themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a huge game. I think this, from their perspective, are we, is this validation? Do we need to validate this 3-0? And I think everyone's going to say, yeah, you do. Let's see how you play. You don't have to necessarily win this game. I think, but you know what? Let's just see where you stack up now against the team that has owned this division for years. Now, clearly, right now, if there's a team that's going to, take them down, it is the Buffalo Bills, and so we'll get a good feel for that on Sunday.
The 0-3 teams, Jets, we're not surprised considering all the injuries.
Right.
Dolphins are tanking this season. I don't know if you can say that, but I can say that. The Redskins are just awful. Broncos, no turnovers, no sacks after hiring Vic Fangio, which is incredible. Steelers, we're all surprised about that, and the Bengals were not surprised. Which of those teams do you think is capable of turning on the switch and making a run for it?
Well, listen, I mean, you look at Denver and the division they're in with Joe Flacco. Vic Fangio is the first year. They'll get it turned around. I don't know if they'll be able to win that division. Pittsburgh, we'll see. I think this is a really big game Monday night. We see the Browns now. The Browns are 1-2, and they're going in against Baltimore. They have not played a division game yet, so there's, they still have a chance, but certainly with very little margin of error. But like I said, there's no panic, but there'll be a sense of urgency in Pittsburgh on Monday night. No question about that.
Now, what about the Eagles? 1-2, already 2 games behind the Cowboys. They haven't even played yet. Lots of injuries at wide receiver, dropping potential game-winning touchdown passes each of the last 2 weeks. What do you think the mindset is in Philly right now?
They're fine. I mean, they've lost 2 close games. 2 games a year ago that maybe they win. But listen, you do not panic this time of the season. Right now, the biggest thing you do is address why you've put yourself in this position. They have a winning mentality. They expect to win. They go out there. They got good veteran leadership. Your quarterback's healthy. You got to get some of the receivers back. Alshon Jeffrey's not there. Deshaun Jackson was a big part of that thinking going into this. And defensively, they've given up too many big plays. So I sit back and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm Jim Schwartz. I'm saying, okay, what's going on here? I don't get a pass rush. Maybe I start rotating some guys through. Find out. Give me some. I want to see what my options are. So I think the biggest thing right now is you unturn every stone. You don't wait around. If I have to make some change, you make some change. Don't be afraid to do that. So sometimes you have to do some things to wake some people up, to wake up your team. Sometimes change is necessary just for that alone. So again, I'm not panicking. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to find out where we are, and there's going to be a sense of urgency in getting some things turned around.
Come on, I can just imagine what your face would have looked like at 0-3.
It wasn't going to be. We're not going to be smiling during the week, and we shouldn't be. You know, so I mean, we're not happy about it, you know, but this is the hands that's dealt us, and we're going to do something about it. We're not going to play tight or be afraid of things. But we're going to have a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose when we go out there on Sunday.
I would have paid to see you in Antonio Brown's face if he ever played for you.
I don't know if that would ever happen.
What's your feeling about? I mean, guys played one game. Played one game, and he's the story of the NFL season so far.
Antonio Brown needs help. He needs more help off the field. He needs guidance. He has surrounded himself with too many enablers. That's unfortunately the case, I think, sometimes with professional athletes. That's the case with entertainers. You surround yourself with this myriad of people and, you know, your little posse that's around you, and sometimes they're just telling you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. I hope that he can go dark, get off the social media, and get yourself some help. He's a father. He's a father of 4 kids and a daughter. Is this the kind of parenting that you'd want? Is this how you want? I mean, you have a responsibility to do that alone.
Right.
So it's more about life right now, Gary. This is a guy that is reaching out for help, screaming for help. We're seeing it in some of his actions. And unfortunately, there's too many people around it are blinded by it. Somebody needs to intervene right now. Intervention is needed for this kid, and hopefully he'll find it. I don't want to hear about a football field. I mean, this kid needs to get his life in order.
Don't mind that noise. You're just bringing food to the next flight over there or something like that.
It's all right.
Are you surprised? Well, first of all, maybe he's taking the first step with the story that came out this week about him taking some college classes and trying to complete his degree. Maybe that's a baby step towards whatever is troubling him taking the necessary steps to get that figured out.
Time will tell.
But Bill, are you surprised that now it was before the stories of the stories of the alleged assaults on these women came out that the Patriots signed him? But in any event, are you surprised that an organization like the Patriots, who have been known to take players who are off the tracks a little bit, but this one seemed even a little bit much for them? I know they think get them in the building, get them exposed to that culture, and they can fix anybody.
Well,
but,
I think to their defense, everything that you saw with them was football related. Then all of a sudden, all the elements come out from his personal life, and that's when they cut ties. Particularly when he did the tweeting and everything else. Let me just say this: there is a pattern of behavior with this guy that goes so far back that, you know, the red flags were there. Personally, I think our system rewarded bad behavior, and it's just unfortunate, and it just takes one team to do that. I mean, to me, character supersedes anything, and I'd rather take less and do more with less than try to just get a bunch of people in place who are selfish, and it may fall in place for a year, but, you know, is that sustainable? Is that the culture you're trying to create? And so, you know, again, I understand it. He was on a 1-year contract when he went up there. If you were going to get him, he's going to, you know, it was all going to be incentive laden. And so, just right now going forward, it's not even about contract. It's not about team. This kid's got some serious mental issues. He's got to get his life in order. I hope somebody intervenes, gives him the guidance that he needs. And, you know, because it's more about him being a parent right now than him being a football player.
I'm sure there was a lot of issues in Pittsburgh, but they must have done a really good job keeping a majority of them out of the public eye, because there was nothing like this that ever came, that I can remember at least. You'd hear about his battles with Ben or you know, things of that nature, give me the ball some more, but it was never the off the field stuff that I remember hearing about. Maybe my memory isn't so good, but it just seems, you know, in the last few months, we're learning so much about this guy that we didn't know before.
Yeah, and isn't that the truth with a lot of these people that we see, and you start to go back and you start seeing it. So, yeah, it's just, like I said, it's unfortunate. It is where it is right now. I think the most important thing moving forward is that this guy can surround himself with people that care for him as a person, not people that care for him because he can go out there and make money and play on the football field. Agent starting with him. So again, it's who you surround yourself with. At this point, too many enablers, and I hope somebody can intervene.
I can understand why no team wants him right now. I mean, he's toxic. But the thing I would be concerned for him is that there's no real structure without being in a team atmosphere. Do you think there's anything the league can do to try to provide that structure, and even though he's not employed in the NFL right now, to try to get him to get that guidance and counseling that you're referring to?
I think the league has got all kind of resources, Gary, but until a person recognizes they have a problem, it's never going to get solved. You have to realize you have a problem. That's the first step in solving anything and helping anyone out, is recognizing you have an issue. I don't know if he recognizes he has an issue because he has deflected everything. Everything has been deflected. It's been everybody else's fault except himself. And he has to look in the mirror. Somehow somebody got to intervene, and if they can get to him, then I can understand it's an issue. Getting counseling is not a problem. We all get counseling. I mean, at some point, we all need to have someone come in and give us another perspective that maybe we've kind of deviated from. You know, we all need that. And we shouldn't be looking at that as some kind of scar or anything else. We're not depicting you as anything, but gosh, I think we look up to him if he recognizes, you know what, I need to get some help. I think we would all look at him and be proud of him for being able to acknowledge that.
You think the league would be willing to help him, even though he's not employed right now by a team?
You have to want help to get help.
Right. Okay, let's end this pre-flight playbook, and again, we thank Bill Cowher so much for coming by. On a lighter note.
Sure.
In the studio, you and JB and Phil and Boomer and Nate have great chemistry. It's obvious by watching the show. It's really developed with Phil there coming in last year. But when the lights are off, how many fights do you have to break up between Phil and Boomer?
Oh, it's great. No, I got to tell you, this has probably been the best we've ever had. I mean, when Phil came down from the booth, bringing him into the studio along with Nate, like the current player, and I've been there with Boomer now for 13 years. Boomer was there a couple years before I got there, and JB's kind of the glue that keeps everybody together. We really, really enjoy being with each other. We do the first halftime. We stay in the studio. You talk about that game last week with the Giants. With all the studio, the cameramen, they were just hooping and hollering when Daniel Jones scored, and all of a sudden, the long pass to Evans is like, oh my gosh, we have no corners. What the heck's Janoris Jenkins doing? Oh my gosh. And it was like, they were just yelling and cursing, and all of a sudden it was wide right. We love our Giants. So it was like the gambit of emotions in a 5-minute time was awesome, which is what the game can do. And this, what he's done, like you said, the Monday morning after that game, people in New York, you can not in the city, man, what about our quarterback? And so it's awesome, and it's great. And I just, I'm excited for New York fans. Honestly, I said, being a New Yorker now, it is a great sports town.
You got to start talking a little bit more like a New Yorker.
No.
You just know what I mean?
No. I'm still a Yinzer. I'm a Pittsburgher at heart. So, but I love being in the city because it is a great sports city, and they're dying for a winner. And hopefully we can keep it going with the Giants.
Well, I, for one, am glad you're not coaching, because then you wouldn't have had time to come over here in the middle of the week to be my guest. And I really appreciate Bill being here on Pre-Flight Playbook. And if you're in the airport watching on one of the iPads or home watching on your computer, we hope you'd enjoyed this, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
That's great. You're awesome.